Welcome to the UEA Catholic Society Podcast. This is Galilee episode 3. I'm Jamie.
I'm Ben.
I'm Luke.
And welcome to episode 3. It's been quite a while since we've done a Galilee episode. Well, it's been literally around 9 months. So, well, what can I say? This has been the summer. We've been busy with our university work. I'm in my final year. And Ben's busy, but also we're also just lazy, so there is that to take into consideration as well. But anyway, we have a new guest on the show tonight. We have Luke. Luke, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
I'm Luke. I'm Ben's Pookie Bear.
Are we keeping that in?
Yeah.
Okay. No, to be fair, we do need to discuss Pookie Bears in this episode. How it works. So you're Ben's Pookie Bear, and what else are you, Luke?
I'm a third year history student. I'm currently doing RCIA in converting to Catholicism.
Very cool. Anyway, so first topic of this episode I would like to discuss is to have a think about the state of the church today and what we as young people think the church needs to combat the threats it's facing today. Like some of the mistakes it's making. Of course, as I've said before, this is a very opinionated podcast, so we're not saying we know best or anything. We all three of us are just lay Catholics, but we just want to give our insight and thoughts on what's currently going on in the church, and maybe give some possible solutions or routes the church could take to maybe strengthen itself nowadays.
It's like the saints books. Most books written by saints begin with a thing saying like, if I say something accidentally heretical, I submit to Holy Mother Church.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is the statement we are making.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Exactly. One thing I do want to bring up. I mean, all three of us are guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
I imagine. I hope.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that there's a very disproportionate balance between the number of girls and women attending Mass and doing Catholic stuff compared to men. Now, obviously, you still see men at Mass and, on campus, there's plenty of guys that come along to Mass in the multi-faith centre and go to the social afterwards and, come to the events. But in generally speaking, there does seem to be a bit of there's not a balance there. It's very much largely dominated by women, which it's not a bad thing. Clarification. I love seeing, the fairer sex at Mass. It's wonderful to see so many people coming, whether they're men or women. But, considering the theological role of men within the church, it's kind of concerning that you have such a smaller number in proportion to, women coming to church and attending Catholic events and supporting their parishes and all that kind of thing, And actually, I think this is, in regards to young men nowadays, I think there's something to be said about Ben, you and I were actually talking about this at one point, but the sense how Christianity has become kind of like obviously it's always been countercultural, but it's become like this kind of attractive countercultural thing,
absolutely.
like especially on social media and everything, like the whole idea of being based. And it is funny to, play into the whole, thing, and everything. And, there is the truth of it, Catholicism is based. It is, exactly. It is the truth. But, obviously there are going to be plenty of, people who subscribe into that, but it's not really so much Catholicism that they like or are following. It's more so the sensation they get from being part of something that's like, outside of the norm, or basically it's kind of something that I guess inflates their own pride and ego in a sense.
What I think about the idea of being based, or people who are attracted to that, is almost like a purity spiral. I think someone who becomes Catholic because it's based is very likely to then become Orthodox, and because of any problems with the Catholic Church, and then when they have problems in Orthodoxy, they'll end up in Islam or something, and they'll go further and further. It's just what is the furthest thing from the modern world I can get?
Yeah.
Which in terms of religion probably is super traditional Islam, like still tries to live like it's the 600s.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be fair, on the other side of the coin, there is a positive side to that kind of movement, because it does mean that lots more people who wouldn't otherwise have really thought about Christianity or the church or joining it, if it wasn't for these, memes and edits and all that kind of thing. And I don't know if, Luke, because obviously you're currently converting,
Yes.
and I don't know how much those were an influence in your conversion.
It's the age-old meme of the propaganda experts when they come across a 14-year-old based Christian edit. No, they certainly help. I think they can help to get you interested in the church, but you still have to have that willingness to like submit to the church, and the humbleness to like the humility to say, actually, this is true. And this requires a commitment. It isn't just I'm a Catholic, I'm based, look at me.
Yeah.
It's I'm a Catholic, I go to mass, I pray, I do all these things.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think I can be so bold as to say, like, were it not for the based edits, I would not currently be Catholic. Like, I do think that. I don't think that's necessarily a problem as well. I've seen some commentary online concerned about people converting solely for that. And I think of it as, in a sense, like joining the church, it has a matrimonial like quality to it. So I think it's okay if your first intro to being interested in Catholicism is because you think it's super base. In the same way that your first reason for talking to a girl might be that she just looks pretty. Now, as long as it doesn't stay there, then you're fine. But there is that danger of people converting and they're just more concerned about being based than holy.
But I feel like, I don't know if it's the same with you, Ben, but there are moments where conversion is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I mean, if you're only going because of these like based edits and you think it's based, you will eventually fall away. So I feel like people who follow through and fully convert, they have to have something else there.
Yeah, I guess in a sense, like converting just because you find it cool to convert is basically like it's like building your house on sand kind of deal. Like it's not going to stand the test of time. But before we do get further into this, can we also clarify what based means? Because obviously we're very familiar.
That's a great idea.
There's going to be lots of people watching who have no real idea of what based means.
These gentlemen right here.
I feel like Ben's probably the most qualified because, like, I know what it means, but he's the most based man. But because I know I can use it in sentences. I know what it means, but like in terms of actually defining it, it's kind of it's a positive thing.
It's a word that like most people who are chronically online like we are know how to use it, but probably couldn't define it. If you were to try and obviously any definition you get will like fall short. But if you were trying to like grasp at something, it's something that's based is like I would say it's like countercultural, unpopular, and true. Is the like fundamental of being based is being the true voice against like a sea of lies.
And like online, it's you see a post that's controversial, but you agree with, and spam based, and
controversial is a great way of putting it.
Like, if you support Donald Trump, you say Donald Trump is based. If you support Joe Biden, you say Joe Biden is based.
Although Joe Biden is not based.
Yes.
Biden's meant to be Catholic, isn't he?
Unfortunately.
I don't wonder, like, does he? Obviously, he's so dementia-ridden at this point. So, like, he is.
Based.
But, like, I do wonder what goes on. Because there's actually something I was thinking about yesterday in terms of like people who develop like Alzheimer's and dementia, who like grow up religious and like enough so much that they, they're known for being religious or whatever. How much of that do you think they can hold on to as like that illness sets in? Because I've heard of people with like Alzheimer's and whatnot, or that they forget like their family members, but they still remember how to pray the rosary and all of that kind of thing, and they still regularly do that, and yet they forget their family members. So it's interesting to think about.
I don't think you would forget your faith. I don't think God would let you forget your faith.
Yeah.
If you're a strong Catholic, if you remember how to pray the rosary, like it means you pray the rosary. I feel like you will never forget that, and you will always have that sort of grace to, even if you can't understand it as well, it's always there.
Well, this is the thing. So, like with praying the rosary, it's such a rhythmic prayer. With a lot, and it's got that like repetition and a set structure. So it's something that would like, if you were trying to make something stick, like the rosary is the thing that would stick, aside from God's grace on top of that. Now, whether if you like you have a lot of dementia, whether you really like fully grasp what you're doing when you're praying the rosary is different.
Yeah.
Which I think matters less for rosaries because God can take a bad rosary.
Yeah.
My question more like what I would wonder is with the Mass. So as I understand the ordinances of the Church, you're not supposed to participate, or you're not supposed to partake of the Eucharist if you haven't participated in the Mass. Now, how well can someone with dementia actually participate in the Mass? Actively consider the mysteries going on.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought to think about, you know. This, because I mean, often I think when we think of like the human soul, you know, it's so intertwined with our conception of like our consciousness, I guess. You know, just think, you know, well, I think it's very easy just like not to consciously do it, but to kind of inherently assume that like our minds and our souls are like one and the same, kind of. You know, like you know. So when it comes to something like Alzheimer's or dementia, which affects people's minds so much, it's kind of weird to think of the fact that they might not be able to interact with, like, well, I don't know, like, would they be able to interact with God as well as someone without dementia and Alzheimer's can, you know? I don't know, I don't really have a place to go with that, but I just think it's an interesting thing to think about, you know?
I think it's one of those, only God knows.
Yeah, that's probably
We'll
it.
find out.
Yeah, which one of us is going to purposely get Alzheimer's so we can like experiment?
Dementia.
It's definitely Luke.
I like how we went on to like dementia and like spirituality after talking about like what based means.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just to briefly
platform.
return to that whole like popularized kind of Christianity on social media, and kind of to wind it just a little bit further back to the idea of how much males interact with the church compared to females. What do you guys like have any idea what could maybe get more guys to like interact with the church, like young men, I guess, especially?
I mean, for me, I would love that like new convert like pontificating what this 2,000-year-old institution could do. As weird as it sounds, like make it harder, make it demand more, make it harder. And make it different, because as a man, I do get the sort of sense of feeling of like if something's not difficult, it's hard to justify as like really worthwhile. When something's very difficult and you do it anyway, it feels so much more rewarding, so much more fulfilling, and make it different because. Especially with some of the like liturgical innovations that happened in like the 70s, you just end up making the Mass the same as everything else in the culture. Which I think is why, because you're right, way more women show up to Mass and women tend to be more religious. And I would imagine they make up the bulk of Catholics. I would be surprised if the ratio between men and women was not closer at the Latin Mass.
It's like pre-Vatican II. Or do what you mean nowadays?
No, I mean
now
when people say the 62 Missal, I think that will have a closer men to women ratio, because I think men are more drawn to something like that.
That's true. I mean, there's already plenty of statistics that show that like Latin Masses nowadays, you have a higher proportion of younger people and families going to Mass. So I mean, that already says something. So I guess there's this kind of a liturgical problem there in a sense. But even outside of that, because I guess I'm just troubled when I interact with other Catholics who are men and around my age, and like I might see them at Mass or something, or like we'll chat to them a little bit here and there, but then I don't really see them living out their faith as much as you would hope them to. And maybe, perhaps it's just me being too like judgmental and jumping to conclusions. Maybe they're actually excellent Catholics when I'm not seeing them, you know, and they're just busy on the days I do see them. But I don't know. I guess I just feel frustrated when I, you know, as a guy, when I see other guys who seem not to be doing as much as they could be as Catholics. You know, especially considering the state of the world today. You know, if anything, you need as many guys as possible to be good Catholics and live out their faith openly.
But is it not down to the individual to do that themselves? The more individuals that are practicing and unashamedly practicing will inspire others to do the same. I know having you guys as friends has helped me to practice better, because I will go with you to midday prayer on Monday, or things like this. And it's like seeing how like proud you are of your own faith. As individuals, if we can practice our faith as strongly as we can and as unashamedly as we can, then surely others will be at least somewhat interested. The same way people, when they saw a martyr, I'm saying we should all get martyred. But but you look and you go, why are they so strongly believing?
I completely get why. So, I mean, the broader question of like, what does the church need? Fundamentally, is the same answer as it's always been: saints.
Yes.
You think of it's surprising. It almost fits a 500-year cycle, like exactly. You have like a super early church, like a very passionate church, and then once it becomes legal, you get a lot more conversions, but the church sort of gets complacent and slow, and then you get the pontificate of like Gregory the Great. Saint Jerome puts the Bible into Latin. Augustine, and you those, obviously they weren't acting alone, but those sole figures create such a swell of fervour, and then you get it again around 1000. After that, the sort of energy has dropped a little bit. Church gets slow in place, and then like Francis, Dominic, Aquinas a bit later. Again, I think Francis is probably the best example. All Francis did was radically live the gospel, and think about like how many millions of Franciscan, like actual professed religious people, like monks, Franciscan, how many Franciscan orders there are, all just off this one person's incredible devotion. And then you get again in the 1500s, and then you get Ignatius, founds the Jesuits, spreads the gospel like worldwide. And then if you take it on these 500-year cycles, here we are, 500 years from it. And what is the church? It's slower, it's more complacent.
And this episode is going to be used in our canonization
And we all become saints.
That would be nice.
Okay, but if we were all saints together in heaven, would we be like a little group of saints? Because like you see like Saint Dominic and Saint Dominic. You see like you always have 3 monks, saints. Saint Benedict.
Oh, what, Benedict, Dominic, and Francis?
Yeah, we would be like that. We'd be like all 3 in every single church.
Yeah, well, you do get some saints that are like really closely associated with each other. Yeah, then you like Peter and Paul.
Yeah, we'll have like Saint Benjamin in the church.
No, the church does need a Saint Jamie. There's
no
no Saint Jamie.
Need
There's
Saint
James.
Ben as well.
We're
right, we already got one of you.
We
already need one.
We had a Saint Luke 2,000 years ago. Go
Yeah.
away.
Oh, well, there's a reason it hasn't been a Saint Ben or a Saint Pookie.
Yeah. So yeah. That's a good summary, really, of what the church does need. It's just the same as always.
Individuals.
Yeah.
I guess it's just easy to forget that, you know. Because I guess it's always been easy to forget that, because in terms of like just the church's collective memory as a whole, it only really goes back like, you know, maybe 50 years or so.
Yeah.
So like, you know, that we're using all of that as like a comparison for like the state of the church, whereas, you know, really you need to take the entire history into account when you think about the problems that the church has, because chances are it's had the same problems before.
Well, this is the thing. I think you especially get that with history. there is an idea amongst people to generally look at, or to think of our time as unique somehow, as compared to all of history. People complain, especially about, like, right now online, very traditional circles complain a lot about the hierarchy. Whatever you think about Pope Francis, I could probably name 10, 20 popes that I would say is worse than him, like, in their day. This is, we might think the church is in crisis now.
Yeah.
And we can say, well, looking back on it, in the 1500s, the church was doing just fine. If only we were more like that. If we were living in the 1500s, that'd probably be like apocalyptic. What was happening in the church.
Well, half of what you read from medieval saints is apocalyptic. Is the church is like crumbling, collapse.
Yeah, Bede talks about this all the time, of just how corrupt monasteries were at the time. It's like, it's just a place for nobles to just send their unwanted kids. Like, they're not actually living the faith.
And going into the Gregorian reforms as well, it's like the idea of married priests. It's like, the fact that priests are able to marry is going to, like, destroy the church. I mean, it doesn't destroy the church. Even the Protestant Reformation, which you probably argue is the biggest post the initial persecution, like, thing that could have really destroyed the church.
Yeah, or like the schism.
Yeah,
Great schism. Yeah,
they didn't. So even if the church is in a time of crisis, you have to have that faith that it will get through it.
Yeah.
Like, maybe Peter, along this rock I will build my church.
Yeah.
And the gates of hell will not prevail against it.
I mean, I think I've really sat with this recently. All saints, I mean, saints will call, say in their books, in their writings, in their speech, will call people to faithfulness, to holiness, to repentance. But one of the most commonly repeated things across saints, different cultures, different generations, is boldness, courage. Joan of Arc, massive on that. She talks much more about being bold, going forth bravely. I think people who are just spending too long, like, worrying about the state of the churches now, it sort of shows that, like, your view of God is just too small. That's not to say that we shouldn't try to help the church. Of course we should try and identify issues. Jesus would say, take the log out of your own eye before you deal with the splinter in someone else's. But we also just need to have that faith that it's possible to be like, we are not in a death spiral that's inescapable.
Yeah. It's like, going back to the boldness point, it's about that individual courage to just do what is right in life. And you can see it with many issues today. It takes a lot of boldness to do the right thing.
And obviously, part of a Christian life and trying to become a saint, you need to think about your vocation and discern it, which a lot of Catholics probably don't really, well, to be fair, you could probably say this about many aspects of the faith. You could say many Catholics probably don't really know about this.
Yeah, definitely.
But like, in the term of discernment, like, it's especially important because, obviously these two guys are converts. Obviously, Ben's baptized, confirmed. Luke is on his way to that. Praise be to God.
Yeah.
I'm a cradle Catholic, so I've always been a Catholic. I've always taken it seriously. Although when I was younger, like maybe age of 10 up until like 18, I was practicing, did believe in God, did believe in the sacraments and all that kind of thing, but I don't think I appreciated it as much as I should have. And so I basically just lived a life that was Catholic in appearance, but there were like a few areas in which I was failing pretty badly. But
almost every story of a cradle Catholic who like gives talks now is like, well, I sort of fell away in my teenage years and then found it again around 20.
Well, the thing is that, like, I wouldn't even, the annoying thing is, I looking back on it, I must have been going under some really weird mental gymnastics, because I wouldn't even say I fell away. Like, I still did consider myself a Catholic. I believed in what the church taught. And the thing is, I think I knew that a lot of the stuff I was doing here and there was wrong.
Yeah.
But the problem was I just made it a habit to do those sinful things.
Yeah.
And so, like, I had to kind of, on the one hand, I was Catholic, go to mass. I was even confessing these things sometimes, but I'll just go right back to doing them like a few days later, And gradually, I got better, and there were periods where I did generally try not to, and I went a period of time doing well, and then obviously I fell back into it, as is the case, like, with any kind of sin, You're not going to just conquer it there and then.
I remember seeing something, and I feel it's so true. It says that the devil is really smart, and you can tell that as soon as you think about a sin, because immediately, clearly, he's feeding you thoughts, because your justification goes so quickly. So quickly you can go from God. Like, you go through this, 20-step justification. I'm like, I wouldn't do this for anything else. What's happening?
Exactly, yeah. But just to return what I was talking about, so yeah, obviously I'm a cradle Catholic, blah, 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 I haven't been the best Catholic in the past, but for the most part, stayed the course. But I didn't really think about my vocation properly until coming to university. And it was only because of, the talks that, Sister Teresa and Sister Camilla gave at the MFC and that kind of thing, and the chaplains here, that they were really the ones who got me to start thinking and praying about what it was God wanted me to do with my life. Because up until then, I was just kind of, I'd given thought, I pretty much just assumed, okay, probably going to get married, I guess. That's what I'd like to do, I mean, innately, most guys want to get married and have kids. And I had given thought to the priesthood here and there, I could be a priest, but I never seriously considered it ever. So obviously that shows that for loads of cradle Catholics, they don't even think about discernment until they're already, nearing their 20s. Some people maybe even later. And that's a real tragedy, because on the one hand, you could say that, everyone's got different, time frames in which they find, discern their vocation, not realize what it is, but then pursue it and then actively fulfill it. But I think there are plenty of cases where it's there is a sense of time lost almost, and missed opportunities, I think, because of that lack of awareness of the importance of discerning a vocation. And obviously, part of in terms of of the priest shortage, if more young men started discerning earlier, it probably would be a upswell of priests.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so that's just it shows how important discerning a vocation is. I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add to that. That isn't just telling me that I should be a priest.
I would like to start my point by saying I think Jamie would make a fantastic priest. I really think so.
This is back because he'll have to watch this again.
He'll have to watch this back as well.
We need to keep this in. We need everyone to comment. Everyone comment. I think about priesthood often, and I'm not even part of the church yet.
At your stage.
I think knowing it's an option to become a priest is a big thing. Because before I became a Catholic, I was a priest. That was a weird, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think maybe a lot of Catholics still think that. I'm Catholic, but we wouldn't go as far as being a priest. But actually, sort of showcasing that it was really the only other option if you're a man is you get married or you become a priest, or a monk. Just having availability and knowing that actually things like the talks. I think universities and schools should do discernment talks and put it out there.
Yeah, I forget the saint. It's a 20th century saint, or at least a late 19th century saint. Ran a big orphanage, and he said that about a third of people should have a discernment to religious life. And not surprisingly, of the kids he raised in this orphanage, thousands of kids, about a third of them went into religious life. Which is not at all the numbers we see now, not even close.
Wait, a third?
Yeah, we're...
Ooh.
Wow.
Oh!
Well, to be fair, it could be easily one of you guys.
Yeah,
as well.
It'll be all three of us.
It's going to be only Jamie or all three of us.
Yeah.
Dear.
I can't remember what my point was. That's my point. I think the reason that people wait so long if they even do start discerning, or just take it for granted that they're going to get married, is because, almost in a way, like, discerning is a specifically religious thing to do. Whereas, especially in your teens, if you're forming your identity around all these, like, 20 or so things, or 19 of those, will take it for a given that you're just going to get married. So it's easier to conform, and especially you have that option within the church, obviously, to get married. It's easier to make all of those agree than to say, no, I'm sacrificing. I'm going to let all of these other groups I'm in think I'm weird for the sake of this one, almost. Which, and then I think you can sort of just get into a cycle of, like, you just take it for a given that you're not going to be a priest, so you don't bother discerning. And because you don't bother discerning, well, you don't really hear the call to religious life, because you probably won't.
But even if a person doesn't have a call to, like, a genuine vocation to the religious life, that lack of discernment will mean that they don't have as good an understanding of their actual vocation if it is marriage.
Of course.
Sure, it's all good and well if you're not going to become a priest or, a nun or anything like that. But if you don't even think about what it means to be married, actually ponder the significance of it, then you're not going to do as good a job in that marriage. It kind of goes without saying. One thing, and I have brought this up to you before as well, Ben, that kind of irritates me, is that when it comes to the general broad understanding of the priesthood, or religious life, there's this idea that you have to be like a really devout person, and obviously that you should be devout. You should aim to be a devout Catholic. But when it comes to priesthood, there's this idea that priests, the people, like the men who become priests, are all like special in a certain way. Like, I'm not saying priests. There's nothing. To be honest, there is nothing not special about a priest when you think about what a priest does and how valuable they are. But in terms of the people themselves, there's this kind of false idea that, like, if you have a young man who seems to be very devout and caring a lot about his faith, there's kind of this assumption that, are you going to become a priest? There's like, there's almost this, it's like, in the same way the secular world views, like, serious Catholics in a kind of, not extremist light, but a lot of them will, like, look at you a bit weirdly, or not really understand why you do that, and think, that's a bit much. In a similar way, there's loads of Catholics who look at other Catholics, and kind of, I guess it's not quite the same attitude, because obviously it's not a negative attitude they have towards people who seem particularly devout, but it's the same kind of misunderstanding where they're like, they feel like there's some separation between themselves and those people. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense.
No, it does, and I like the point you make about, like, the perception of, like, you're devout, I guess you want to be a priest. I think for a non-religious society, the closest analogy they have for something like religion is basically like a hobby. And it's when people are super into their hobby, it's like, do you want to go into it professionally? Do you want to, like, run a game shop if it's some kind of game, or whatever? But no, and what it came to mind, I forget where it comes from. In fact, it's probably one of those things that no one knows where it comes from. But I've heard it thrown around as like a Catholic saying of, like, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. So that, the men who later become priests were not special, except in the way that all of us is somehow is special to God. But they're not. It's not like it's not a caste system. There's this higher class of people which priests are taken.
It's not like they got a little mark on their head that says become a priest. But I've noticed everyone who doesn't know Catholicism, who I've told I'm converting, has asked, "Are you going to become a priest?"
That's exactly the experience I had.
So it's like, and so you mean about your point, like, as a hobby, and when I take it so seriously that you're gonna actually do it like full time, and like, we're not gonna do it full time regardless. Of
Exactly.
But it's the professionalisation of a hobby. Since we have a secular worldview, priest does.
Yeah, no, I thought it's like, yeah, you're gonna do it full time. Yeah, married men aren't like part-time Catholics.
Would you like me to pause it? Or,
Of course.
To be fair, if I was a saint, I kind of would rather not be canonized. You know what I mean?
I guess like if you were a saint, you wouldn't want to be canonized in the sense that like you'd want, because you'd be incredibly humble.
Yeah, true.
So, you know.
That's not why. I'm not like I don't want to be canonized because I'm. Well, okay. I don't want to be canonized because I'm so humble. Because I'm so prideful, I want to seem humble. You know.
Yeah. Like at this point, I'm not like close enough to God to say I don't want to be canonized because I want to be humble and mean it 100% genuinely.
Yeah.
And there's not like any pride in me saying that.
Yeah, like I want to say I don't want to be canonized, so everyone thinks I'm humble. It's like secret pride.
Yeah, I don't go around walking like, guys, you know what? I want to be a saint, but I don't want to be canonized. What about you? Do you want to be a saint? Oh, I do. I don't want to be canonized.
Yeah. It's very, very easy to fall into false humility.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I never got why pride was like the capital sin. It was always like, it just seemed like one among many. In fact, it seemed easier to defeat than the other ones. And it like really occurred to me that it is the most pervasive sin. So hard.
One of the things I noticed was I was praying with litany of humility, and I was like, I want people to know I'm praying with litany of humility. And it's like, well, that's not humble. That is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at me, I'm so humble, guys.
I was actually praying the litany of humility the other day, and like when I was praying it, like certain lines, I can't remember all of them, but like make me want not to be, honoured or all that kind of stuff. Like kind of do want to be honoured, kind of would like to be remembered for stuff and all that kind of thing.
To not be loved, but to love. It's like, I kind of want to be loved,
So like it's
No, I do think many issues in the church would probably be fixed if that was as common as like a rosary.
Yeah, that's a fair point actually.
It is.
Which it isn't. I'd say the rosary daily. I don't say the litany of humility probably weekly.
I think the time I prayed it the other day was the first time I had actually even prayed it. So
I've done it a few times ever.
Yeah, I don't do it all that often because it's like it's almost before you do it. You don't want it to be true. Like, I do want to be esteemed. I do want to be liked. I do want to be known. Like, well,
I mean, every night one of the prayers I do that are part of my nightly prayers. Technically it's just one I just made up, but it includes like I just ask God to grant me humility. And like it's very easy to pray for humility, but when you actually think about what humility means, like it's a lot harder to live it.
There's the I remember hearing was it a homily on it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than and apparently it's not actually talking about like needles and camels. Well, it is talking about camels.
Yeah.
But there's some gate in Jerusalem called the Eye of the Needle, and it's a really thin gate. And it doesn't, the other ones close at night, and that one doesn't close at night, or something. But basically, the only way that you get a camel through the gate, the Eye of the Needle, is it has to be like forced onto its knees. So it's easier for, so what basically what it is, like it's easier to humble the camel than it is man. Than like the rich man. I'll send you it. I'll see if I can find it. It's a really good homily. It explained it way better than I can. I watched it like 6 months ago. I don't really remember it that well.
I've never heard that.
But it's all about like you have to be humbled before.
Well, pride was the sin by which Satan fell. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, pride just leads to so many other sins. Like I feel like most sins you can trace back to pride, really. Which is
every sin you can trace back to pride. If you say like it's you rejecting God's law, that is pride.
True. My law comes before God's. Definitely. I do find it interesting how pride comes out when you're doing the right thing as well. Like how easy it is to get prideful about doing the right things.
It's so poisonous. Like you're doing something good, and then you're thinking about how you're doing something good, and then it's like the good thing is like suddenly spoiled by the fact that you're like, I'm doing a good thing kind of deal. Yeah, but I guess that's kind of the point. It's always a constant battle. It's just inch by inch. You get a little bit more humble.
Mm.
And it's it's a lifetime of work, I guess. Really.
Yeah. But yeah, so easy for. So I noticed on the Wednesday masses, I will kneel without the kneeler. I don't do that if I'm by myself in the church. And I've noticed it, and I'm not consciously thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I noticed it. I'm like, if I was the only one in this church, I'd kneel on the kneeler. I wouldn't kneel on the floor. I kneel on the floor when there's other people here. I'm probably subconsciously doing this so someone can see me kneeling on the floor and think like, oh, he's super devout, and I hadn't even noticed I was doing it, but I can't think why else I would do it, because I wouldn't do it by myself ever.
I've noticed that recently when I've been to mass, even praying the rosary in Latin, I've been brought to tears, which is a really moving experience.
Yeah, it really is.
But then it's I want people to see that. Yes, it's a bit strange for a man.
Yes.
The woman takes a picture of herself after crying and me after mass.
Same.
But the Jesus prayer got me last night really badly. But yeah, it's and then I'm I kind of want someone to know that I'm crying whilst praying whilst at mass. It's that's pride.
Yeah. I had that kind of, I guess maybe not explicitly, but I kind of had that experience when I learned about the significance of receiving communion on the tongue. I mean, because very much my whole life I've received on the tongue as devout Polish mother. If you go to Poland, pretty much everyone receives on the tongue.
Big up Poland.
Big up Poland.
Classic.
Shout out to
Represent.
Shout
out to the entire nation of Poland. So that obviously most of my life I've always received on the tongue, besides a few very rare exceptions. But anyway, when I learned that really, at least in the West and in the Latin Rite, you should really only receive on the tongue unless you're physically unable to, and how receiving on the hand is really only I don't even know how to refer to it really. But the point is that
I've looked into it. So it was a papal. So right after Vatican II, people started doing it. So the Pope at the time, I forget which one it is, in America, gives an indult to this specific diocese that the people there can receive on the hand for a year, while the priest was supposed to be catechizing them to explain why they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
That then gets extended into 10 years. And by that point, it just becomes such a wide practice that there is no more other dogmas. So technically, canon law, as I understand canon law, it is actually against canon law to receive on the hand.
Yeah.
It just becomes such common practice that it's never enforced.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense why you should only really receive on the tongue when you consider that as literally the body of Christ. Why would our hands be worthy of holding any of that? But when I basically began to learn a bit about that and realized that, I receive on the tongue and a bunch of these people receive on the hand. It's very, I want to say it's a kind of mindset I've thankfully managed to grow out of now by the grace of God, but definitely there were times where I would go up for communion and I would just be so aware of the fact that I'm kneeling, I'm receiving on the tongue. And then I'd go down and kneel and I would glance up to see who else was going to communion, that's on the hand, that's on the hand.
And even, I can't even receive communion yet, and I still often like that. I'm looking that's nice, he's on his knees, isn't he? He's receiving a hand, and I'm there just getting a blessing.
Yeah.
I'm sure those who are receiving on a hand are significantly better Catholics. But it's still back to the judgment.
I've confessed that probably about 3 or 4 times, which doesn't sound that many, but for someone who's only been baptized before that, this is a good, I don't know, 20% of every confession has come up. That is I didn't pay attention at all in Mass because I was too busy thinking she should be doing that, he should be receiving on the tongue. Yeah. Don't do the orans position.
Oh, the orans position. I still have a bone to.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. When I confessed it to Father Peter, he was well, there is such a thing as righteous anger. You're okay to be upset by those things, but not to the point where it distracts you during Mass.
Yeah.
It's something you should be passionate about, but not.
Yeah. Can we talk about we already have kind of talked about communion and reception of it. But like for people who are watching, because I imagine there might probably going to be a fair few people watching who probably do receive on the hand, and like maybe we should kind of like try and explain what church teaching is on that and why we, well, me and Ben receive on the tongue, and Luke is going to receive on the tongue.
Yeah. You've if I don't during my baptism, you just like slide down.
We'll be waiting on the front bench.
I walk up with my hands and he's like.
But yeah, and then maybe also like, there's less to say about the Oran's position, but there's still that's something that grinds my gears even now. The Oran's position, and it's something I've kind of grown to notice more being an altar server at mass, because obviously as an altar server I have my hands like this most of the time. But anyway, we'll get into that. But so communion on the tongue, as Ben's already explained, is really how most Catholics should receive the Eucharist. It's a little bit different in different rites because there's more context to that. But if you're going to a Catholic Mass in the Latin Rite in the West, then you should really just receive on the tongue. And like, the thing is, if you have an understanding of what the Eucharist is, just common sense kind of does point you towards like, yeah, receiving on the tongue does make more sense. Because the Eucharist is the true presence, you know. I mean, that's a core part of the Catholic faith, is the fact that at Mass, during the consecration, when the priest holds up the bread at the altar, it becomes the body of Christ. And it's not just, and any like particles that come off the host is still the body of Christ, you know. Which is why, like, sometimes if the priest is celebrating Mass and once he's consecrated the host, he might hold his hands like this, because he'll have little particles on his fingers. So, like, anyway, there's a bunch of stuff to be said, but basically, and receiving on the tongue is the safest, the most reverent way of receiving the Eucharist, you know, and especially if you're kneeling to do it, which is how ideally you would do it, you know, and it's such a shame that lots of people don't seem to realize that, because the only reason the priest can handle the Eucharist is because his hands are quite literally consecrated, and granted deacons can as well. I think.
But even though they've had the same oil.
Yeah, but even then, they're deacons. You know, they're not a lay person.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about extraordinary Eucharistic ministers, but we'll save that for another day, I think. God bless them, but I wish that they weren't a thing. But yeah, so if you're going to Mass and you're a Catholic, please try receiving on the tongue. It's a wonderful way to be way more reverent. I'm not saying if you go and receive the Eucharist on the hand, you're being rude to God, because a lot of people who do that probably aren't thinking in their head that, oh, there's a better way of doing this, but I'm going to do it like this. You know, like for a lot of people, that's just the way they're used to doing it. But try receiving on the tongue, because it's such an act of humility towards God, appreciation for Christ's sacrifice, and it just feels more beautiful and intimate as well, rather than because if you're receiving on the hand, you're going up, sticking out your hand, the priest is placing it in hand, and you're eating it like a crisp.
Yeah.
So like, you know, you're picking up with your own fingers, nom nom nom.
You're treating it like it's a piece of bread.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas obviously, if you're having to kneel down, you know, with your hands together, opening your mouth, and the priest himself is lowering it into your mouth, it's way more mythical in a sense in the experience. I'm not saying you should do this because it'll make your communion experience so much better, like for yourself in terms of enjoyment level. That's not what I'm saying. But it's probably true. But it is kind of true. But in the sense of improving your spiritual life and your kind of relationship with Jesus, it does a lot.
Well, sorry. No, I was just going to say, there is the classic Catholic maxim. There is a classic Catholic maxim of lex orandi, lex credendi. The way you worship or pray is the way you believe. So you can tell yourself as much as you want, and you can genuinely believe it, that the Eucharist is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus. But if you treat it like a crisp, you're going to start believing it's a crisp, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe different in other cultures, but I don't eat any other food kneeling and have someone put it into my mouth. That doesn't happen.
That's just me.
Yeah.
But also, like, it isn't. You're not owed the Eucharist. it's not like, I think sometimes when you hear like, if you're not in a state of grace, if you haven't been to confession, don't receive the Eucharist, or why can non-Catholics not receive it? And you can get in your head like, that's not fair. Why can I? No,
Yeah.
this is Christ's body that you know. It's for prayer, like, Lord, I am not worthy, but you should enter under my roof. You get to receive it through God's grace. So if I gave someone the best thing in the world, you know, if I'm willing to give it to them, maybe I don't care too much how they take it, but you'd expect them to take it in a way that's respectful and gratitude. I think going on your knees, receiving on the tongue, it's just a sense of like gratitude and humility that I get this thing. Like, I don't deserve it, but I get to partake in it. It's like such a beautiful and fantastic thing that you get to partake in.
Yeah, there are so many. I think the Eucharist is, and I think it's also so linked to the vocations. I would be blown away to find out that a man wants to be a priest who thinks the Eucharist is just a symbol. Like, why would you sacrifice your life to consecrating the Eucharist if you don't think it's really the body of Christ? I think there's so many little things you can do around the Eucharist to change your faith. So recently I became convicted of not saying take communion. You don't take communion, you receive communion. Because like you say, you are not owed it.
And when you think about the posture of holding your hands out for communion, like, you're receiving it in a sense, it's being placed in your hand, but it's, when I look at it, it's like, gimme. You're like, here.
It's like, can I have it?
It's like, come on.
Twist, please, can I have some more?
It's kind of like a sense of, give me what I'm owed. No, you're not owed anything, it's a gift. So just try receiving on the tongue at some point. It's much better.
There is also, this might not make it into the card, but there is I think it's a Fulton Sheen talk. He's talking about receiving the Eucharist, like kneeling along. No, it isn't Fulton Sheen. Basically, the like symbolic connection of Christ's falls, and it was an absolutely beautiful explanation of like Christ, you like fall to your knees, and then you have to stand up again and walk, like continue. It was. I'll see if I can find that and send it to you. So good.
But so much of Catholicism, I mean, it's the Mass, of course, but of course, when you think of to be honest, the cathedral tour we went on at St. John the Baptist earlier this semester is also a good example of how in Catholicism, everything visually is constructed in such a way that it's meant to lift your mind to the divine. So when you receive, like I was saying earlier, when you receive on the tongue and you kneel down, that's far more, I think, connected to that line of thinking than just walking up and sticking your arms out. So it's when you look into it, every part of even Novus Ordo masses, which is most of masses being said nowadays in the West, it's constructed in a way that the hand positions of the priest and whatnot, they're all meant to guide your mind towards this contemplation of the divine, really. And I think people kind of forget that, and they just do these actions or whatever just because they just think that's just like, how can I describe it? Like, for example, during the Confiteor, I think it is. We beat our breast 3 times, through my fault. And obviously, I think most people can understand, because we're admitting our guilt. But I think a lot of the time it's very easy just to do it, automatically and not realize why you're beating it. Like there's meaning in the physical actions you're doing during Mass.
Just smack yourself as hard as you can.
Okay.
Another point of pride.
I do think one of my takes is hit yourself a little harder. I think everyone should. So I started hitting myself like a little harder.
I started hitting myself.
Next time, just smash your
head. Bring a crowbar with you next time. Just
I found it helped me, to be honest.
This is nice.
I used to like barely like.
Just like gently tap.
Not even really gently. I'm just like stopping when it hit. Like I'm not even letting it like stop because it's hit me. Whereas I moved on to like actually like striking, and it does really change it.
And like just at Catholic Mass, the reason why like you're kneeling and standing and sitting so much is because it corresponds to what is happening in the Mass. You're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. You know, there's meaning behind it. You know, you sit during the scripture readings because you're receiving the word and you're passively listening to it. You know, and obviously you stand up for the gospel because it's the gospel. Makes sense. But then obviously, like during the consecration, you're kneeling because it's the consecration. You know, Christ is coming physically into the church. So it's important to remember why we do all these things and to do them properly.
There is value in doing something like that, even when you don't know why you're doing
of course, yeah.
it.
I mean, it's kind of the sense of like God achieving good through imperfect means.
But this, what I'm saying is, I don't think it's imperfect, because obviously, God can.
Okay.
Maybe I do think it's imperfect, but I think there's probably just like a flaw of being modern Western people. Like we want to understand everything. Like,
yes.
why does this happen? Why does this happen?
Yeah.
There is a certain sense of like. I don't know how to put like I don't know, but that's what the church does. So in like you just humility to Holy Mother Church.
I mean, it's relevant to like RCIA. So how much of RCIA has been Father Peter saying, yeah, but we don't really like no, we can't really put it exactly into words, but like you're not quite there to like properly go into it yet. It's like you sort of just have to accept that there are things maybe we don't.
Yeah, that's the old Augustine line. Like, if you can understand it, it's not God.
Yeah.
Because if you know God is real, if you know Christ is present in the Eucharist, then for you, like little bits don't matter.
This is the thing. This is the thing. Okay, Christ is present in the Eucharist. How? Oh, through transubstantiation. Okay, how does that work? No idea. It just does. And I know it does because it's revealed in Scripture. How it why specifically saying those words in this situation, I don't know, but I know that it does.
You know it is present because so much of what happened. I mean, there's miracles that are proof, but in the individual moment of just being there, if you're receiving all the time, I imagine if you're able to receive it, like you just know that it is truly Christ's presence in a way you couldn't almost make it up. You couldn't like lie to yourself to make you think it. It is or has to be.
Yeah. I mean, no, I definitely agree that there's loads of aspects about, many aspects about God, and then loads about the church and the faith that you just can't comprehend as a human being. You're never going to fully understand it. I guess what I was just basically trying to say is that there's a reason why we do these certain things at Mass, and I think if more people knew the reasons why, they would take more care to properly do them during Mass, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. There is sorry, there is I remember seeing a video. Actually, it might be Ben Shapiro. I can't remember him talking. Might actually.
It's not like Ben Shapiro, but no, he can.
It might be. It was it's either him or it's like a rabbi or something. It was a Jewish man, so I remember talking about the word in Hebrew for taste is the same as tradition. It's the same word. And the link between that is essentially like food is meant for sustenance and you get the enjoyment out of the taste. In the same sense that tradition serves you whether you know it or not. And understanding it gives you that like extra enjoyment. So whether you know, even if you don't know why, kneeling at the right point, standing at the right points, like it serves you in the same way that food will still give you sustenance if you eat it. Yeah. Knowing why, that's the cherry on top. That's the taste.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, not to be fair, I don't want to turn this into just like me complaining about people doing stuff at Mass that I don't think they should be doing, but I do want to talk about the Orans posture during the Our Father. Because it's kind of cringe. It's kind of cringe, guys.
It's very rude.
And like, no shade to the people who do it, because it's not a sign of not necessarily a sign of your spiritual state, but it's like why? Why?
Why?
I'm sorry.
Why?
Maybe this seems a bit accusatory, but I guess since becoming an altar server, it's just been something I've noticed more and more because I'm not doing it as an altar server. You know, like because I don't know why it has become a thing for lay people to do the Orans Posture during the Our Father, but I don't know if it's a case of seeing the priest do it, so they're like, oh, I'll do. I guess I'm meant to do it too. But
When I was first coming into the church, I did the Orans posture, not because I saw the priest doing it, because I saw everyone around me doing it. So I was just like, well, I assume that's correct.
Yeah.
Do the Orans posture, and then it's only like reading obscure like canon law. You're like, oh, okay, but it's not. I think there's so much that people just assume is tradition that is not.
But then is it not up to the people in charge, for the priests, to just say, guys, please stop doing this?
I guess
I never heard it before now.
Well, the thing is, this is the thing. Like, it's very easy to be like, oh, why don't more priests talk about these problems? But I think it's simply like they've got bigger problems to deal with. They're busy, you know, being priests. Like, if priests with every one of their homilies are like, by the way, guys, I'm seeing you guys using the Orans Posture doing Our Father. Don't do that. You know, like, it wouldn't be a bad thing, but it's kind of like, well, that's not why he's giving a homily. You know, he's not there to nitpick and say you guys should be doing these things better and this thing better. He's meant to talk about the gospel and all that stuff.
True. But if they mentioned it,
oh yeah, but if they were generally more, you know, open about talking about it, and
I noticed, and I don't know if you noticed, last year, so from September to when would it have been? November. All right, yeah, like late November. I didn't see many people like bow or genuflect before receiving our Lord. Yeah. And then Father Andrew just made a comment. I think it was on the Feast of Christ the King. Like, remember, this is a king. You bow before you receive it. And now everyone bows before. In fact, I noticed at Catholic quite a lot more people kneel receiving it, which I definitely didn't see to begin with. It's just a quick comment.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm like, we should do more work.
Yeah,
but
a quick, so many things, because again, people will follow what people do, and if you're the only one with your hand out, you look around and be like, oh, no.
But yeah, there are some issues that are like minor. I mean, they're better to be. I was genuflecting on the wrong knee for about a year, and I didn't know. I didn't even realise.
Excommunicated.
Which knee is it? Like, I was getting under. This one.
Yeah, your right knee should touch the floor.
Yeah. The first time I did it on my left, and I could do a little hop to get.
I used to do it because it's more comfortable to put the left knee on the floor. But it is specific, like you would kneel that way to one of the Roman emperors, so you specifically kneel the other way. The reason.
On the note of genuflecting, so at St. John the Baptist Cathedral, the tabernacle's to the side.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to genuflect in front of the altar.
No,
you're supposed to bow in front of the altar.
Yeah.
So you don't go on your knee in the middle.
Although you can, like at St. John, like walk to the front and genuflect facing the tabernacle. But no, technically, and this is something I only found out recently, you are supposed to bow. I always thought the like big crucifix that's on the altar at the back, I thought the base of that is quite thick. I thought that was a little tabernacle. So I thought there was something, but apparently there's not.
Although, to be fair, I don't think there's too, obviously aside from the fact that in canon law it says you should just bow, there's not too much issue in someone genuflecting in front of an altar if there's no tabernacle there. If anything, it's a good sign, shows they're taking things seriously. But I mean, the thing is, when we had our cathedral tour, we had that mass at the little shrine of Our Lady. When Father and I were processing out from the sacristy to process up to mass, wait, did I say Father Andrew, Father Peter?
I can't remember.
Okay, I meant to say Father Peter. Father Peter is our current chaplain. Also a very good chaplain.
Shout out to Father Peter.
Shout out to Father Peter, Papa P-Dog. That's literally the second time I've used that phrase. I probably will never use it again. But
the next time you see him, please.
What up, Papa P-Dog?
But anyway, and he said to, obviously we genuflected in front of as we passed the tabernacle, but he said not to bow or do anything as we pass the main altar, because the altar we were using for Mass was the one at the shrine. And that, that makes sense to me. But if I wasn't taking part in any kind of Mass or anything, I was just walking around the cathedral, I probably would still genuflect in front of the altar.
See, I still do.
It
though
just
I know
feels,
that you probably shouldn't.
It just feels right to.
Yeah.
You're in this big cathedral, this huge altar, this stuff, and I feel I should.
I've been making, because very recently I found out about this, I've been making more of a deliberate effort to sort of like face like 45 degrees, but I still do genuflect.
Yeah, I always genuflect in front of the tabernacle, which is the
it's really
Blessed Sacrament.
the Eucharist.
I mean, where it is in SLV. So
very
much like bowing for the altar instead of genuflecting. I don't know. So I think mix up a little.
Although I bow before the altar at the MFC, because that one feels wrong to obviously there isn't, it is literally wrong because there isn't a tabernacle. It also sort of feels wrong in a way that it doesn't feel wrong at SJB.
Well, I think I found, I don't know if this is just kind of some weird reasoning I've subconsciously come up with in my head, but when it comes to like genuflecting in somewhere like the MFC that doesn't have a tabernacle, never has had a tabernacle, I tend to genuflect. Maybe come to think of it, maybe I do it less now and I just bow now, but I used to genuflect and go down to one knee when I just entered it for the first time that evening. Like everything.
I still do when I enter.
It's like when I enter, I'll genuflect in front of the altar to just bow. But then for the rest of the Mass, I'll just bow. But that makes sense. It's a missionary place, so
I do prefer genuflecting before an altar than bowing, to be honest. And I think that's because like when I used to do taekwondo, that was a thing. Before you entered or exit the doyan, you bow before you enter, bow before you exit, and then it feels like I'm doing that again. So I genuflect because like I've never been at anything that you genuflect before you enter and leave.
That makes sense. But I mean, in regards to like these small things which like is important. It is like they are kind of important, but it's not the end of the world if some people don't get them 100% right. Like the Orans posture during the Our Father and stuff. It's just a matter of like these small things not being too big a deal really, because there are bigger issues at stake when it comes to the church. But it's just small things do add up, and and if you can, it is important. It is good to like just tweak the way you do things with Mass. If you can.
You can almost you can be like too focused on the big picture. That like, okay, well, technically speaking, you can say a like super irreverent liturgy in a completely blank building. Are you gonna get a great saint like flourish in that environment? Probably not. There is like a general like just being in a beautiful space. I think it raises your minds to God. Like if you focus on enough small details, then the big details deal with themselves. Surprisingly.
That makes sense. I guess the reason why I feel a need to say that these things, it's not the end of the world if people don't get them right. It's just because like. It's very easy for me to fall into that hypercritical kind of thing. Where like, these people aren't doing these things correctly, blah blah blah, and somehow that makes me a better Catholic, which is obviously not the case. But that's good. I'm glad I've moaned about the Orans posture a little bit because it's been on my mind for a while. Did you guys have like another thing to follow on to, or
a Pookie bed?
Oh yeah, we need to define what a Pookie bear is.
The final segment.
Catholic friendship.
Catholic friendship. Pookie bears.
Pookie bear is. Please do.
Well, I say what Pookie bear is.
Yeah, but within like a Catholic lens, of course. Like
quote Aquinas at least like thrice.
Okay. So Ben and Jamie are my Pookie bears. It means that when I'm ill, they comfort me. We cuddle, we hold hands, we kiss. They hold me tight.
None of this is made
All of this is made. I feel safe and warm in their presence.
Well,
That's actually really sweet.
Well, I mean, like, when you dissolve the concept of a Pookie bear down to its most basic meaning, it basically just means a good friend. Well, yeah, just a Pookie bear is just like a good friend. You know, it's just kind of this funny internet trend of yeah.
It's like a sort of cringe thing you'd call your partner. And it's turning it around. And
turning it into something platonic.
I do think, I don't know if you saw, was it a poll or something? That like Gen Z wants way less sex scenes in films. Like they're just fed up with a lack of just like friendship. So I think it almost is like, you don't want to like overly intellectualize it, but the idea that that is happening and people are like almost reclaiming like romantic terms and applying them to friendship. People just like miss having just friends.
It's friends are important.
Yeah, very important. Yeah.
You guys are good friends. You've enriched my life.
Thank you, Blue. You're a very, very good friend as well.
You've made mine so much worse. I don't mean that. I'm sorry.
Unless there is anything else we want to discuss, I think I am interested to know, Ben, how your conversation with the Mormons went.
Oh, the Mormons.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so...
There's not a lot to say.
Well, for clarification, so as we were setting up to film this video today, me and Luke were in here getting things ready, and I think Ben was as well.
I was in there at the time.
Yeah, and then suddenly the doorbell rings, and our friend Igor, who's currently working on his summative, bless him. So say Hail Mary for Igor right now, and that will help him with his summative. And because God transcends time,
that's actually so true.
Like the amount, like if everyone who views the video prays for Igor, he's gonna like get that done in no time. So
he's gonna be able to come in for that segment actually.
If he doesn't walk in right now, then we know people aren't praying.
Wait, what was it? Oh yeah, so we're setting up in here. The doorbell goes. And then Igor suddenly comes and says, guys, I think there are Mormons at the door. So Ben, being the stalwart pillar of Catholicism he is, strides to the front door to have a chat with these guys. And how did that go, Ben?
Really well. They were just asking. Obviously, they didn't know that this is a household with a lot of Catholics. So they were just asking about like whether I believed in God, what I looked like, where it came from, things like that. It was mostly just questions. They didn't actually say a lot. So yeah, it was very pleasant to talk to. But I feel like I would be. Obviously, it's really fun to be like, oh, I went to the door because I want to convert them to Catholicism. And of course, I do want them to convert to Catholicism. But there is, it's a very old saint, and I forget who it is, like a super early one.
Polycarp?
I don't think it's Polycarp.
You heard you mention Polycarp.
Yeah, I did mention Polycarp to the Mormons. Who says something along the lines of like, it would be remiss of me to spend 15 minutes with someone and not tell them about Jesus Christ. Which is such a challenge, you think like, presumably, I've seen it quoted with 15 minutes, but there's no way he said 15 minutes because it wouldn't have existed at the time, so I don't know what he actually says. But I think about how many people do I actually spend 15 minutes to? Well, okay, everyone in my lectures. But it's impractical to talk about Jesus in your lectures. Like, every time I get on a bus, every single person on that bus, I've travelled with them 15 minutes, and I haven't said anything to them about Jesus, so... When you've got people that show up to your door wanting to talk about Jesus, you take the opportunity.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I wish I had your confidence in doing that. Like I when I heard there were Mormons at the door, my instinct was to hide behind the couch. Like,
hide behind the couch with the crucifix, blasting like Marian hymns.
Help, Mum! Scary Mormons at the door.
I mean, I was given an unnamed person some dating advice recently. And basically the thing, why did you look at Luke when I said that?
Just including him in the conversation.
Oh, okay, yeah. And the dating advice basically was like, just go on the first date. Like, you don't actually need to worry about all these like big picture things. Like, just talk to someone, be a normal person. So, in the same way that I don't have to have I see some Mormons at the door, I don't have to go in with the idea of like, I need them to repent and believe Christ is Lord.
Mm.
Like, I can just have a chat to them.
Yeah.
And have enough faith that eventually there's something, some fruit will come out of that.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, even like just having a normal conversation with non-Catholics, I mean, that's already kind of exposing them to Christ in a roundabout way anyway, you know?
I think Father Mike Smith said a quote that has always stuck with me, of like, watch how you live, because your life may be the only gospel that someone hears.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Simply living your life as a Catholic.
Mm.
That might not be you who brings them to Jesus, but them witnessing you 10 years down the line might have been the thing that makes them step into a church. Or
This is the thing. This is why I've spoken to Igor about this, because he wears crucifix inside because he doesn't want to treat it like jewellery, which is a very reasonable concern. But I wear it on the outside, so everyone who looks at me knows I'm a Christian. Like, almost holds me accountable.
Yeah.
If I could act badly and people wouldn't know or wouldn't make the conclusion like, oh, he's a Catholic, of course he's a Catholic. If I have it out, if I act badly, I know that reflects on my faith.
Unfortunately, I've noticed in wearing it, people do often just assume it's jewellery.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I just Catholic.
That is true.
So I see your point. I like to think that, like, this guy. I like to think if I wear a crucifix, someone might make a comment on it and like start a conversation.
That's happened to me quite a lot, actually. Or praying the rosary in public. A lot of people ask you about that.
Yeah, it could be the thing that, again, it might not be you to do it, but just it could be the thing that lights that spark.
Roundabout, I think it was the first thing I said on the podcast. The thing that draws you to your future wife might be that she just looks pretty. And so the thing that draws someone to like a hardcore life radically devoted to Jesus might be that rosaries look cool.
Yeah.
Or that wearing a crucifix looks cool.
Or you saw a based edit on...
You see a based Christ edit on Instagram.
It could be...
Yeah,
exactly. So, thank you very much for watching this episode of Galilee. We're going to call it here. But before we do end the episode, we're going to pray a Hail Mary in Latin for Igor, who's working on his summative. And you can pray along with us. So, pause the video and find it in Latin real quick, and you can even pray along with us. How cool is that?
We'll put it in the description.
Oh yeah, we'll put it in the description actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
In nome Patris et Filio et Spiritui Sancto. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. In nome Patris et Filio et Spiritus.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining this episode of Galilee. Hi, you're very welcome. And thank you again for watching.
Thank you.
If you'd like to get involved at all, so if you're a UEA student, or even if you're not a student, if you're just based in Norwich and you want to get involved, feel free.
I'm sorry,
Based as in geographically based, not as in, But I mean, if you are based and in Norwich, then also do let us know. But yeah, if you'd like to get involved, you can always find us on Instagram, send us a message on there, or turn up on campus at our 6 p.m. mass in the NFC, and you can always say hi to us then. Or you can always send an email just at ueacatsoc@gmail.com. I can do that. But that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video. God bless.
God bless. God bless.
Usually I wouldn't say grace over a banana.
Right, it's my breakfast every morning, so I always, what are you doing?
Peeling a banana.
To be fair, I didn't open it how I normally open bananas.
I see.
I snap them in two.
These are a bit soft though, no? Like, surely these are a bit soft.
Like, I don't know, this is perfect for snapping into.
You think so?
Yeah. But I can't do it with it open, I don't think it works. I've never done it. Oh no, it still kind of crushes it because the skin was already open.
This is staying in the video, by the way.
This is how it ends up. This would rather be in the outtake.
We'll include as like a clip at the very end. Like it'll be just like black and no sounds, so people think the video's ended, and then
for those who stick around. But yeah, I open it so you have 2 of these.
That was impressive. They just tore a banana in 2.
Yeah, you never done that before? Next time you have a banana, just tink, I break so easily. Like, don't try and like rip it, just like, and it just pops.
Oh.
And then these are exactly hand-sized. You just have to put there perfect. You have 2 of them.
It's your monkey behaviour.
You can also do the forehead one, where you get it like the curve and you hit it on your forehead, and then it keeps this bit intact, so it like unpeels both of them. So you go like, and then you have 2 peeled bananas. It's the most impressive thing ever.
Actual ape ancestor blood memory.
So, evolution is fake. Explain this one.
It's nice bananas.
Thank you for the banana, Jerry.
Of course, thank you for eating them.